Morning, everybody. It's Matt here from NEUPC. Hope you're all well. Just admitting people into the lobby as they're joining now. Ella's already joined us from CreditSafe, and I'll hand over to her very shortly. The session is being recorded as well for any colleagues who wanted to attend and sadly couldn't this morning. So the link will be shared out afterwards, and it will go on our website as usual as well. I'll just give it another minute or so to let people have the opportunity to join us before we get going. But effectively, we're going to be covering kind of the past, present, and future of the agreement. We've completed the first year of the CreditSafe agreement. We've moved into year 2 with some enhancements and additions. And Ella will be in a much better position than I to tell you how to get the very best that we can out of those as well. So yeah, if we just give it another minute or so, and I will hand over to Ella. But I will lurk in the background. So if anybody has any questions, because cameras and microphones are off, if you want to put it in the chat function, I'll share those on to Ella, and we can address them on the call, or you can message us afterwards. But yeah, I think probably Ella, looking at this, we're good to go. I'll just admit people as they arrive. Over to you.
Fabulous. Thanks, Matt. Hi, all. Thank you for joining. I can't quite believe that we're now in November. And we're already a year into the latest agreement that we've had in place with NEUPC and the wider team. When me and Matt sort of last caught up, we thought it'd be a good idea to have sort of a bit of a catch up with everybody, I suppose. Bring you along on the journey we've been on around, I suppose, tailoring this package to suit the requirements that seem to have been coming in over the past year, whether that be compliance needs, bank verification, and so on. And I know that I've actually spoken to quite a lot of you here individually around some of the monitoring functionalities and so on. So what I'll do is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to take you through some of the additional functionality that's now available to you within the package that you take from CreditSafe, and then also some tips and tricks around some of the monitoring portfolios and so on. Say any questions that you have at any point, please do feel free to drop me an email, or if you're happy for us to sort of answer the questions on the Teams chat, then please feel free to pop it in there as well. Fab. So I'm just gonna. Oh, I think Matt. I seem to be blocked from sharing my screen. Are you able to give me permission to do
Right,
that?
I do apologise. Let
No
me see
worries.
what I can do about that. I was going to say, unfortunately, our marketing person, Danielle's just moved on very recently, and she'd set this up. So I do hope that I'm going to be able to undo that for you.
I'm sure it'll be somewhere in the permissions.
No,
But
no
say
worries.
what I'll start running through in the background while you're doing the
Yeah,
techie
no
stuff
worries.
anyway,
Sorry
Matt.
about that. I won't be 2 minutes.
No, don't worry. So essentially what we've done since this new contract kicked in, I'm sure a lot of you have seen comms around it, is we've added in bank verification for both consumer and commercial bank accounts. Now this is part of a commercial bank sharing scheme. So the data isn't actually from CreditSafe, but because we are a commercial credit bureau, we have access to that shared pool of banking data, along with CCDS data and so on, and that's available to like finance providers and so on. Now, we will run through exactly how that works, but just so you're all aware, it's not something that any of you are going to have to individually pay for anymore. It was originally going to be like an enhancement that would be payable by each individual institution. However, due to demand, any UPC have decided to include it within the package that you all have access to. So there is a combined limit of 10,000 checks across the whole board. They have been sort of divided up equally to each individual consortium across the board. We've also introduced Protect, which is one of our enhanced compliance screening products. Now, I'm sure most of you have been using the compliance screening product for quite some time now. Others, it'll be an entirely new feature that you may not have even known was available, especially if you weren't at the conference earlier in the year, where it was very much focused around some of the compliance products. But essentially, when you now run a credit report on any company, what we'll also do in the background is screen the company itself. We'll screen all of the directors, all of the shareholders, and the PSCs for international PEPs, sanctions, adverse media, law enforcement, and financial regulator alerts. That'll all be done in the background. And then if we find any potential matches, and by potential matches, we mean anything that's got a 90% plus match rate, we'll put a little flag on there so that you can see. And the reason behind sort of the integration into the credit reports is so that rather than potentially screening 20 individuals as well as the company itself against all of those compliance data sets, we do a lot of the legwork for you. So it may only be that 2 out of 10 or 2 out of 20 of the directors and shareholders listed actually have potential flags against them. And therefore, it's only those 2 individuals that you'll need to do the enhanced sort of checking on, where you look at what potential matches they've got. You read the documentation that's been published on the individuals or the corporate entities, rather than having to run through that process with all 20 directors, shareholders, or whatever it might be. So that's a little bit of the extra functionality, and that also ties into monitoring as well. So whereas at the moment you've got monitoring very much on the financial side of the credit reports, so when businesses file their latest set of accounts, when a company has a new director, they change their registered business name and so on. You might get an email alert depending on what you've got set up. You can now have that same alert system for a company that might have been sanctioned, or one of the directors has been fined for tax evasion, or something like that. Oh, sorry, Matt, I can see you there.
No, that's absolutely fine. I think you should be able to present on your screen now. If you want to give that a try for me, just so you can.
It's not giving me the option. It's still grayed out, unfortunately.
Okie dokie. No worries. I'll just take a... Right, you just keep on going. I'll keep
I'll
trying.
keep
Thank
on
you.
going,
Sorry
don't
about
worry.
that.
It's the joys of having a noisy northerner on as an account manager. So yes, you have the extra functionality now to monitor not just the businesses, but all of the individuals that are linked to that company as well. Things like if you've got a company whose main shareholder is married to a board member for like a state-owned business, and therefore there is a higher chance of bribery and corruption, you'd get an email alert to tell you that he or she has been appointed to the board of said state-owned business. Just so that you're aware, and say any processes that you then need to follow internally, it can sort of kick off that journey. Now, there's also been sort of some talk, and I know that I've had a number of calls with some of you individually around sort of the standard monitoring. And I think a lot of you have automatic monitoring switched on, which essentially means every single company that you're credit checking will automatically enter that monitoring system on the financial side. Which can become quite painful when you end up getting alerts for thousands of companies that have accumulated over years and years. We can do some cleansing exercises for you, so that we can strip out those monitoring portfolios and upload an updated supplier list. And then you can choose what you want to be alerted to. If someone's score or limit goes from, I don't know, a 90 to 89, is that going to have a massive impact on the way that you work with that particular business? Probably not. However, if their registered company address changes, or they go from low risk to moderate risk to high risk, then that's probably something that's going to have an impact on your ability to work with them, or may just trigger you guys to have a further conversation with that particular business. So we just want to make sure that the monitoring platform is doing more for you, and becoming sort of helpful rather than a bit of a hindrance, because I know how frustrating it can be when you get those daily emails that come through it, gosh, around 6 a.m. every day. And they've probably got hundreds of companies in there that you're no longer working with anyway. So we'll make sure we do a little bit of a cleaning up exercise on there. Matt, how are we looking? Are we any closer to sharing screen
I've
at all?
followed the instruction there for the choice of a co-organizer. I'm not sure if that's made any difference for you at all.
It hasn't done anything, but if I leave and join back, it might help. So I can duck out literally for 10 seconds and I'll be right back.
Sure, no worries. The joys of tech. I do apologise, everybody. We will get there. Thank you.
Hello, I am back. I am back in record timing and I am able to share my screen with you. So,
Hallelujah, wonders never cease. I think I've lost the Luddite title now. Thank you for that.
no, don't worry. So, right, let me share my screen. And if Matt, you could give me a nod to just let me know that that is all working, that'd be great.
It is indeed.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Okay, so this is probably a platform that all of you now are all too familiar with, the standard CreditSafe platform. Now, first of all, what I'm going to do is show you some of the enhancements that we've made to this report since we last sort of had a catch up. So for the purposes of this, I am going to go onto a company that I'm sure if you attended the conference in Leeds a few months back, you'll be all too familiar with, Nero Drinks Company. Now, this is a small business and they're based in the UK. And as you can see from a credit perspective, you know, they're relatively small. However, there's nothing particularly adverse on their credit report. I don't know whether you would pick up on anything, or whether, you know, based on the processes that you have set internally, you'd be pretty happy to deal with these guys. They've got a load of payment experiences, meaning that, you know, we're trading with a lot of businesses that work with this particular company in the UK. They're paying their suppliers on time, and there's nothing really adverse on their report. You can see from the commentary section they are listed as a micro company, but there's nothing really that's going to set off any alarm bells. However, you may see this little compliance alert tab, and I know that myself and Matt had quite a lot of emails and phone calls when this first appeared, asking what it is and when can you have it. Well, it is here, and essentially this is what I was talking about when we're saying that we are screening the company itself, along with all of the directors. In this case, it's just one, and shareholders, PSCs. Again, in this case, it is just the one, against international PEP sanctions, law enforcement alerts, financial regulator alerts, and adverse media alerts as well. There are thousands and thousands of data sets that go into that, and they are updated every 24 hours, as well as the screening that takes place every 24 hours for any individuals or companies that you're monitoring. Now you can see here that the director and shareholder, Nicola Morrissey, she has come out completely clean. So we've screened her and there's no alerts. However, we do have a potential match on the company itself, which is this one alert here. And what it's given you the option to do is view the results. Now, if I click on there, it'll automatically take you to this page where it will give you the match rate. So in this case, it's 100%. And it'll also give you the reason that the company is listed. And so for this one, it happens to be on a sanction list. If we click this little drop down, and I'm just going to drop down this as well, we can see that we've got the record created date, which is in April of this year. And then we've got the source information, so we can see that it's an international sanction. And then we've also got the consolidated record source, which is OFAC. So this particular business is sanctioned not here in the UK, but they're sanctioned in the US. Now, if we scroll down slightly, what you'll then have is sort of a little bit of information around why this company is sanctioned. And it turns out that this business that's owned by Nicola Morrissey happens to be controlled by her husband, John Morrissey, who has heavy links to the Kinahan cartel, which is an organised crime group. And it essentially says that John Morrissey controls and operates Nero Drinks through his wife, who's the primary shareholder, and is used as a front person for his interests. Now, following this, John Morrissey was actually arrested on the 15th of September in the UK for money laundering as well. This company remains unsanctioned in the UK. However, obviously, given the type of industry that you all operate within, I'd imagine that regardless of the fact that they're not sanctioned in the UK, this would be a company that none of you would want to go anywhere near. And that's the reason for this screening. It's saying, you know, you are absolutely okay to trade with this company in the UK. They're not sanctioned here. However, would you want to? From a reputational standpoint, I'd say the majority of you would probably say no. Now, if you were to run this and you were to say, okay, yes, they're sanctioned in the US, but we're happy to deal with them, what you could then do is select the company. You could download the report there, or you could add the record to a profile, which is essentially how you'd go around adding this business into a monitoring profile. So if I click add to profile here, what it's then going to ask is what the profile is going to be called. So you might have a profile called, you know, Nero Drinks, or you might want to call it something else. Or if you've got an existing profile, potentially by department set up, then you can use that as well. Some of my clients choose to set a profile up per supplier, and then they'll also include all of the directors and shareholders within that same profile. But that is entirely up to you. And I can send out some user guides if you'd like a little bit more help around how that works. So what I'm going to do is actually create a profile called Nero Drinks, and that's where I'm going to start adding all of the directors and shareholders into the same profile as well. So it'll screen not only the company, but all of the individuals linked to it as well. I'm going to hit, oh, and you can tell I've used this one before. So instead, I'm going to call it version 2 and create profile. Now, what you can see here is I've got a profile that's called Nero Drinks Company Limited version 2. You can see when it was created and when the last upload took place. And it's also time stamped, so you can see the user that set it up. Obviously, you have one user ID per organisation, so that'll just have your own user ID listed. And what you can do here is see all of the companies and all of the individuals, if any, that have also been added to the monitoring function within here. Now, what you can also do is choose the monitoring threshold. So you might only want to be getting alerts for 100% match rates based on the information that you've inputted. You might want to be a little bit more risk averse and say, right, I want to be alerted to anything that's potentially got a 90% plus match rate. And you can also choose whether you want to receive the alerts via an email, and that'll be the email that's linked to your CreditSafe account, or whether you're happy to actually log into the CreditSafe Protect tool and see any alerts sat there sort of more manually. Entirely up to you. So for this one, I'm going to choose 90% plus match rate, and I'm choosing to receive email alerts. I'll hit save. And then I can also choose the risk that I want to link this to. So again, it may be that you have a policy internally that when you're dealing with companies maybe outside of the EU, you flag them as high risk. So that when you pull an audit trail, you can see exactly the companies that you're deeming high risk. And so you want to be screening or maybe keeping an eye on a more frequent basis versus potentially the companies in the UK that you deem to be much more low risk. Entirely up to you how you go about using it. You've also got an audit trail that you can pull off. So if anything did happen, or if you wanted to evidence searches that have been carried out, this will show absolutely everything that's gone on here. So it'll tell you as and when profiles are added, monitoring alerts, when you're adding individual businesses or individuals into the monitoring section, when you're changing risk ratings and so on. It'll all be time stamped for you. So if you do ever need to evidence that you are following these processes, then you can do just in this little audit section here. I'll now show you how to add an individual into here as well. So if I click into individual and then choose to conduct an individual search, and what we're actually going to do is use John as an example, double R, double S, into here, and we're going to run a search on him. Now we can see that there's a few flags against John Morrissey's. Now I know, because I've done this a few times, that it's actually John Francis Morrissey that we're looking for against a sanction. If we drop this down, again, it'll give us information around this individual. So we can see that he's been sanctioned. He's also been arrested for money laundering. It'll give you the date. There's also adverse media about him. There's information around drug trafficking, money laundering, organised crime. It's extensive. It also links any individuals that are connected to this person, as well as a lot of information around the individual. So again, if we wanted to add this person to monitoring, we'd select his record. We would then choose to add to a profile. We would select the profile, which is Nero Drinks version 2, and we'd hit add to profile. And then that will add him to that same profile that we created earlier. So we're monitoring the company as well as the individual here. And again, I can choose the monitoring threshold that's linked to him, and I can add him as high risk if I choose. And that will screen all of these companies and individuals every 24 hours and alert you to any changes that might have taken place. Okay, so now that I've done the sort of compliance section, I'm just going to check, are there any messages or questions in the chat box on that one, Matt?
There's nothing as of yet.
Fabulous.
In terms of that, I do wonder if it might be worth mentioning there, because sometimes we get a query comes in where people will use protect and then the compliance module as well, so you get the same information but in a different way. So I just wondered if it might be worth mentioning the difference between the two.
Yeah, of course, of course. So we offer two separate compliance products. You have access to both of them. So historically, you've always had access to compliance search, which is a manual search function that you've been able to find here. The data source behind that is Accurus, formerly C6. So it's a big data company, and that fuels this compliance search product. Protect, which is this new version that's now linked into the credit reports, which is this portal here. This is powered by LexisNexis. So it's a different data source. And the main reason we've done it is to give you all options. So they're both really reputable. They're probably the two largest providers of this sort of data globally. And I'm sure you probably recognize one, if not both of those names. It really is preference in terms of which platform you want to use. If you prefer using this one, which is linked into the credit reports, or if historically you've always used this compliance search function here, which is the one that you prefer and you're more familiar with. The decision is entirely with each organisation. They will screen for the same data sets. They will give you the same result. It's more around functionality and the, I suppose, overall journey that you want to carry out. I hope that answers the question, Matt.
Yeah, I think it certainly does there. It's just that you've got the option to monitor whichever one you're using there, haven't you? So you can set those up and receive the alerts and the frequency that you wish as well. So it's an either or, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. And say we do sort of have sort of a few ideas around other sessions that we'll be looking to carry out as well in the coming months. And I think one will specifically be taking an in-depth dive into some of the compliance products, rather than this, which is a little bit more of a brief overview, I suppose. So, you know, if that would be of interest, then please let me know and we can get something booked in around that. Okay, so I'm now actually going to go into bank verification. Now, this is something that I know you've probably seen time and time again, so I'm going to be really sort of quick when it comes to it. So, commercial bank verification is available for businesses in the UK. There are 10 high street banks. Any banks outside of that list, which I'm more than happy to share, they will not be able to be verified through this platform. The reason being, those banks aren't part of the sharing agreement, which also means that those banks can't access this data either. It's a sharing scheme whereby, in order for the bank to gain access, they need to provide the data into the sort of pool of banking data supplied by all of the other banks as well. So this is not CreditSafe data. If the information is incorrect, then it's for your suppliers to contact their bank, because it means that their bank are supplying all of the other banks, or all of the 9 other banks, which I'd imagine 90% of your suppliers will sit with incorrect information. Unfortunately, we can't help with that. It's down to the supplier individually to contact their bank and say, look, you're supplying the data sharing pool with incorrect information here, or you haven't updated our information. So yeah, I know that that's certainly a question that's come through quite a lot. Is this isn't CreditSafe information? This is something that we're privileged to access because we are a credit bureau, and there's only 4 credit bureaus in the UK, and we can all access this pot of data. So the way that you'd go about completing a commercial bank verification is you would find the company name. So I'm going to search for CreditSafe. It's set up in the same way as like a credit report. I am going to click on, say, CreditSafe Business Solutions, for example. It'll then ask you to add a sort code and account number. You can add an IBAN number or a VAT number as well, but those aren't mandatory fields. As long as you've got a sort code and account number, we can run the verification. What you'll then get is a validation result, which is saying, okay, we've ran the sort code and account number, and this is a real bank account. This bank account does exist. And then you'll get your verification result, which is saying, okay, the bank account exists, plus we've checked the name that the bank account is registered under, and that bank account does belong to this exact company, not a sister company, not a parent company, but this exact business. So that's the difference between the two. You may get a validation pass and then a verification no match. That is basically saying that, okay, we found this bank account, we do have the data, however, this is not the name of the account on the bank account. It may be a parent company, a sister company, or what have you. If we don't have information on that bank account, it will come back saying that there's no data available. So you will be able to differentiate between the two outputs. And it's exactly the same process when it comes to consumer bank verification. The only difference with this is that you'll also have to add in their residential property address as well as their date of birth. But apart from that, the process is very similar. Okay. Any questions come through on those, Matt?
Just the one. Do the bank verifications work for sole traders?
They do. So that'd be a consumer bank match. So it depends. If they've got a sort of a business bank account set up, then you can do it under the commercial bank verification. However, if it's just like a personal account that's set up, you'd have to run a consumer bank match on them instead. But you do have both options. Fab. Okie dokie. The last thing that I'm actually going to run through is the monitoring functionality that sits within CreditSafe. And I know that it's something that I think Matt and I get quite a lot of questions on. And when we looked at the number of alerts that are coming through to all of you as a collective, on an annual basis, we're into sort of hundreds of thousands. So I'd imagine that not all of these companies are intentionally being monitored. And so if we can do anything to help clean up these portfolios, then that'd be great. So the idea is that within this portfolio section, you would have something along the lines of a supplier portfolio. Within there, you would have all of your suppliers listed, and what it'll then do is monitor them and send you an email should there be any changes. Now, a lot of you do have this automatic monitoring function switched on. Which basically means every single credit report that you view, it will automatically add them into your monitoring portfolio and screen them every 24 hours, which can result in huge monitoring lists that come out to you every single day saying that there's loads of changes that have taken place. If you do want some help in setting up a new supplier monitoring portfolio and stripping out all of the companies that are currently sat within there, please do let me know, and I'm more than happy to help you get a new portfolio set up. If at any point you want these monitoring portfolios to change or go to a different email address, potentially a different email address than the one that's linked to your CreditSafe account at the moment, you can go in and click Edit Portfolio. It will then come up with the email address that the alerts are currently going to. You just delete that out and you'd add in the new email address, hit Add, and that will be the new place that those monitoring alerts are being sent out to. Any questions that have come through on that one, Matt?
No, there were a couple of legacy ones just on the last point, so sorry to take you back to that. So there was a question on how do you do the consumer bank credit? Is that the tab that was underneath the...
Yes, so on consumer verification, on bank verification, you'd go to consumer bank match, and then you'd just add in the sole trader's personal information. So first name, last name, date of birth, residential address, banking information, and then you'd verify it that way.
Lovely. And sorry, go on.
Oh no, I'm done, Matt.
Yeah, and there was just one more saying as well. When you in terms of the verification and whatnot, can you export and save them?
You can, yes. So once you've carried out the bank verification, so I'll just do a dummy one for you again. What you can then do is click this More Actions tab here, and you can email a PDF to yourself or just download the PDF, which will include all of the company information. So you'll have the company name, registration number, and so on, along with the banking information that you have added in and the verification and validation results. Fab. Any other questions on them, Matt?
Yes, there's just one more saying, do we need to refresh the monitoring portfolio? What's the best way to do it? Would you just send over a list of suppliers, and what data fields would you need to provide?
So all we need is a company name. If you have any more information, then that's great. But what we'll do is we'll do a data cleanse and append on that supplier list. The only thing that I ask is if you could put it in an Excel format. Just saves me reformatting potentially 300 institutions supplier lists. So as long as you can send company names in an Excel format, we can do the rest.
That was all for now.
Fabulous. Well, that is pretty much me done. I've got some extra bits on the monitoring the monitoring alerts, but then sort of product wise we'll come to a close. So we mentioned that on the monitoring alerts, you can choose what you want to be alerted to. You can find that in the notification rules. So you'd go in and you can add or remove any of these areas, and you can also change the thresholds. So it may be that you want percentages, so 10% or 20% reductions on credit limits and so on before an alert is pushed through to yourselves. You can also run some analysis on the health of your portfolio. So you'll be able to see a list of all of your high risk and low risk suppliers, as well as all of your suppliers that are non-rated. So these are dissolution notices. There may be companies that are under analyze, query raised, and this basically means that they've filed either balance sheets that don't add up, bogus financials, or there's been multiple reports of fraudulent activity, and therefore we've suspended scores and limits, and we've referred that back to Companies House to investigate. You're able also to export any of this data out. So you'd go to the export tab here, hit new export, and you can either do an immediate one, or you can schedule these to come out on a weekly, monthly, or daily basis. You can choose what information is included, and you can choose the email address that that information is sent to as well. Again, if you want support in, say, any of the monitoring things, then please do let me know, and we can book in, a 15 minutes Teams call where we can get all of your monitoring stuff set up for you. And apart from that, I am pretty much done. It was only a brief overview, I suppose, on some of the changes that we've made, and we will be doing more in-depth sessions that are looking specifically at compliance and what we should be doing to protect the institutions and so on. I think there might have been one last question that's come in, Matt.
There's a couple more questions just landed. Yes, someone asked if there was a possibility for some of the introductory sessions. I think we've got some of those saved in terms of the training, if for newcomers to the service, so I can signpost those afterwards. So that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
There was a question around this saying, is there a link in the company summary page that takes you through to the bank verification? So you don't have to re-enter the search on the company name and number.
No, you just have to find the company again.
Okie dokie. And there's a contracted supplier that have a very low credit score and are not showing on CreditSafe. And why would that be? And how can it be resolved?
So with that particular company, I take it, are they a limited? It would very much depend. There's probably quite a lot of variables in there, but feel free to send it over to me on an email or give me a call, and I'll be happy to have a look into it. It'll depend on whether it's a UK company, if it's a business overseas, limited, non-limited, and so on.
It sounds like a quite specific instance, that. So as you say,
Yeah.
more information required. But yeah, I'll get in touch with the person in question and send that information over.
Fabulous. Any other bits come through?
Just a minute. The above. Would you like to give an overview on what these topics could look like? So it was in terms of uploading customers and suppliers to global monitoring, integrating CreditSafe data into your existing systems, automating the customer sign-up process and credit decisions, increasing sales and rev.
This is an email that's just dropped at 10 a.m. So this is basically
perfect timing then.
Perfect timing. It's basically gone out to all users, kind of piggybacking off of this, saying, is there anything within here that you need help with? And that way I can pinpoint exactly who needs support with monitoring, who needs support with compliance and so on. So if you want to come back individually on those, we can get things booked in then, rather than having a session that sort of ends up being 90% stuff that you don't actually want to know. It's just a little bit easier for us to tailor. If it happens that loads of people come back on the same thing, then we'll likely put in product specific sessions that we'll invite you to individually, just so that we can do it that way. But the last thing we want is to put in a 2-hour training session and you're only actually interested in a really small amount of it.
Yeah, as you said, those focus sessions can be quite good, and if you've got a critical mass of people wanting to look at that, it's a case of you can deliver the message to a number of people all at the same time and deal with kind of those instances. No, I think that'd be a good approach to take. So yeah, again, if people want to respond to that individually back to Ella, I'm sure that'd be great.
Absolutely. Say any questions, please do feel free to reach out to myself. I know that I'm pretty sure all of you are catching up with Matt on a pretty regular basis these days as well. But yeah, I say I'm happy to help in any way I can. But it was just a little bit of an update on what we've added into the platform, how it's changed, and what that means for you. But there will be more specific training, especially around the compliance products, coming to you very soon. Fab.
I'll just ask, do we have any more for any more at this stage, or are we happy to follow up following the session? No, just getting
No,
all.
I think
Yeah,
yeah,
number of people
brilliant.
saying thank you very much as always, Ella, and thank you from me. It's really helpful for the group. So it's keep doing these on a kind of fairly frequent basis. We tend to do about 3 or 4 a year these days. So yeah, if we
Yeah.
just, well, I'll stay in touch, of course. But as you say, I think we'll be very much informed and driven by what members want to hear about, and then we can let people who are wanting to ask questions just kind of lead the sessions and say, well, this is an area you've asked, we're answering, kind of thing. So
Yeah, absolutely. Say if you have received those emails today, they've gone out to the email addresses that are linked to your CreditSafe account. So feel free to ping over the responses and say myself and Matt will have a get together. And if there are sort of similar responses, then we'll make sure that we get sessions booked in with all of you to address those bits.
And I think, an aside from myself as well, is that we have obviously our CreditSafe in the central mailbox that we get all our queries come through to. It is worth checking internally what the email address is that you have set up for those alerts to go to, because we get an awful lot that still come through to our central mailbox that for different members. So you won't be seeing those, but we get them. But we don't. There's nothing really that we can do with them. So if it's worth checking to see where those alerts go, just to make sure that they're going to a meaningful place so you can act upon them. So that's for any of the members. If you've got any questions around that, if you want to let me know, I can have a conversation around where to change it if you need to.
Fabulous. Well, brilliant.